like we didn't know what we were doing, we're just like, we just make songs and we put them together, that was like
Right.
it, we didn't realize there's like schedules and all these things, and we just kind of did it, and then by the time Pure Noise was like, cool, so like let's talk about LP1, and we're like, it's done.
Very,
Yeah.
very cool, man. Just you today? Just curious.
Yeah,
Not that it
just
matters.
me today. Yeah, the
Awesome.
other guys are sleeping.
All good. Amazing, man. Well,
Yeah,
my name's Adam, and this is a podcast about you and your journey in music. And obviously, we'll talk about the album you guys just released on Friday.
cool.
And yeah,
Awesome.
cool, man. Yeah, so I've actually had Chris on my podcast before, and we talked
Awesome.
all the way up till about you had just put out the record, the album before this one, or you were about to, like, and so it was cool to kind of hear his story, but I also found it fascinating because you helped work on the very first EP, right? Before it was actually a band.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the way Can't Swim really started was born from just a little like Chris's songs. Like, he just kind of had
Mhm.
this demo that was floating around for a bit, and it ended up in my hands through like a friend of a friend. And I reached out to Chris and I was like, hey man, I really like these songs. Like I would love to produce an EP. And that was kind of it. I was a working producer, and we got together in the studio and we just made the 5 songs happen. And a week later, somehow it ended up in Jake from Pure Noise's lap. And then he hit us up and he's like, we want to sign you guys. And we're like, cool, we're not really a band. So
Yeah,
so
that's
that's pretty much it, dude. And then yeah, Chris hit up some of his like hometown homies and was like, should we start a band? And he invited me to be a part of the band too. And yeah, that was pretty much how the band started.
that's awesome, man. Well, first off, where
Yeah.
were you born and raised? Are you from Jersey as well?
I'm not. I'm actually from Florida, from South Florida, like Fort Lauderdale area. But I moved to New York in like 2008 and just started working in like recording and stuff. And that's kind of how I met Chris, was through a mutual friend. So Chris used to play drums in Trash Talk for a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and the guitarist of Trash Talk, this guy Dave, he's like a mutual friend of ours, and that's actually how I met Chris.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you grew up in Fort
Yeah,
Lauderdale. What was it like living in South Florida?
terrible.
Uh,
I mean, it's hot. It's really hot year round. I mean, it wasn't for me, but what I can appreciate about South Florida when I was a teenager, was that it was absolutely a breeding ground for pop punk and emo. I think Newfound Glory was like our, confidant.
sure.
That was
Yeah.
the thing that was our claim, that was South Florida's claim to pop punk, and New Jersey obviously has plenty of
Oh yeah.
amazing band. So that was like our little our little version. And yeah, in high school, man, like the thing to do was just like start pop punk bands with your friends, and that's like just what you did for fun.
Mhm. That's cool, man. I think we grew up probably around the same era. I'm from San Diego, and yeah, pop punk and emo was like the thing, man. Like when those bands, those Jersey bands would come
Yeah,
out to San Diego, we'd see them at these small clubs, and there wasn't a whole lot of all age venues to play at the time. I don't believe really there's many, if any, anymore. I mean, there's a handful, but yeah, all those
yeah,
bands would come out, and it's crazy to see them headlining like these, festivals now that are kind of coming back around, and everything else is
yeah,
wild.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
um,
for sure. I mean, it's definitely, if you told me 15, 20 years ago that this is where I would be and I would be a part of this world again, that was the last thing I would think.
yeah, it's awesome, man. And I love what you guys are doing with the project, and
Thanks.
this new record is awesome. And it has a little bit more of that pop punk, I feel like, feel to it than your earlier stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, man. I mean, I think it was half a conscious choice and half just like what happened naturally.
Okay.
We always try to, I mean, our writing process is definitely, it always starts with Chris, writing some songs, and then he brings it to all of us in the band, and we all kind of like sit and listen and have our ideas or opinions and whatnot. And then we go into the studio and like actually start pre-production. And we did make a conscious choice to be like, we kind of want to go back to like how the band started, because that's, I mean, it was just fun, and we had really, there was a good energy around that first release, and we kind of just wanted to go for that again. But it also kind of happened without really trying. When we were writing, we just noticed that we were leaning way more towards pop punk and emo, and that's like absolutely, like I just said, that is a part of my identity,
Right.
in discovering music as a teenager and stuff. So it just came very naturally to the four of us, and yeah, that's what ended up happening.
As far as music goes, like, do you come from a musical household? Or are you the only one that's really kinda doing this or pursuing
I'm the only one doing it.
this?
I mean, there was a piano. Yeah, there was a piano in my house growing up. So like there was like a thing to touch that was musical. And my dad plays piano by ear, but like, he plays like the same song over and over, and that's all I got.
That's like my dad. I feel like he
But
has one
uh,
book, piano book, and it's like all he plays
yeah,
is that, and it's been, 30 years that he's
yeah.
been doing that. It's like, dude, get a new
Yeah,
book.
yeah. I can relate. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Did you start playing piano at an early age? Was like the first instrument or no?
God, I wish, dude. I took piano lessons when I was 5. I think I took 2 lessons, and I hated every second of it. I can't even remember that as a 5-year-old. That's how much I hated it.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think my sister had like an acoustic guitar lying around, because that's, just happens. And I picked it up when I was like maybe 9 or 10 years old and started messing with it. And it just kind of, I got the fever right away. And I just didn't stop wanting to play instruments and learning guitar, and then learn drums eventually. And that's kind of really where it started taking off.
Okay, so you also started playing drum. Were you the drummer of all the bands you were discussing in high school and stuff, the pop punk bands? Or
I
no?
was actually a singer and a guitarist in our pop punk bands from high school and
Oh,
stuff.
cool.
But yeah, but I sort of quickly became like, I learned how to, record on my own, which is, I don't know how I managed to do that, but I sort of became the guy that people came to in high school to like record their pop punk bands. I mean that, it was on like shitty little 4-track tape things that like, my now brother-in-law gave to me or something. And so they sounded terrible, I'm sure. It was so bad. But yeah, I just, I was the guy in my high school that people were just like, yo, will you record my band? And I'm like, yeah, come on down. And I just like throw one microphone up on the drums and just try to make demos for people.
That's awesome. Well, as far as drumming went, when did you start doing that? And did you ever play in a band, or was it just some more of a hobby and something you enjoyed doing?
Yeah, so I started playing drums when I was like, I guess 10 or 11.
Okay.
My sister, I had 3 older sisters, and one of them had a drum kit lying around. She was living in Orlando at the time, going to school. And I went up there to stay with her for like a summer, and she had a drum kit. And my like 10-year-old mind was just like, I have to get on this thing right now.
Mhm.
And I was just going for it, and I just, kind of learned on my own. And I never really, I mean, I played drums and Can't Swim for the first 2 years, but that's actually the only band I've ever played drums in. That yeah, yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I knew you did play drums for the band for a little bit. And
Yeah.
that's interesting though that you were the guitar player, singer in a lot of your projects. And then I know the drummers are usually hard to find, right? I mean, if you could play drums, at least when I was growing up, if you were the drummer, you could pick any band really you wanted to play with, of any group of guys, because not a whole lot of people are drummers. It was like, I'm gonna play guitar and we're gonna, whatever. So if you played drums, it was like, oh, so and so plays drums. Let's just try to get them to come and play with us for a bit or whatever. Um, do you feel like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's cool that you learned that, because it's like a skill set that you were able to then utilize in the beginning of Can't Swim as well. Like, oh, I'll just drum.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I found that the thing it's helped me in the most is in recording and production and stuff, because being able to play drums and guitar, I can kind of get into the headspace of whatever drummer or guitarist, or just in songwriting in general. I can like see it from their perspective as well, or hear it in a certain way too, and try to songwrite with that, with that hat on, so to
Mhm.
speak.
When you started playing guitar and writing, you were writing songs then in high school that for that.
Oh,
earlier
yeah,
band?
yeah.
Okay.
Horrible songs, but yes.
And then what ended up taking you up to New York? Was it just a passion for wanting to do music, or did you go to school up there,
Yeah,
or
pretty much, man. Yeah, it was a bit of like everything happening at once. I had a buddy that got accepted to NYU and he was like, I'm gonna go. And I was like, damn, good luck. And then I happened to be in New York for vacation. I went to go see that band, Go Go Bordello, the like gypsy punk
Oh,
band.
yeah,
Um,
I actually just
I
interviewed,
went with a friend.
Eugene, they're a
Yeah.
great band, yeah.
Oh, amazing. I saw them play, I think I was like 19 and my best friend from high school was like, "Yo, I'm gonna go see them in New York. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to." So we went and the show was amazing. It was like sold out. It was nuts. And that experience, we just like walked out of the show knowing that our other friend got accepted to NYU and we're just like, dude, we should just like move with our friend.
Right,
And we're like, all right,
wow.
let's just go for it. So the three of us, plus another buddy, so four of us all moved to New York at the same time, and it was sort of a like, yeah, why not? This will be fun, but also, knowing New York in that area was like a hotbed for music and music production stuff. I was like, yeah, I want to absolutely immerse myself in that. So let's just go for it.
Once you moved up to New York, how did you kind of get into the music scene? Were you guys in a band, or did you start a band, or were you just
Yeah, yeah, I definitely
producing for
started bands.
people? Like, how did you kinda
Yeah, 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 yeah. I managed to like bounce around between different jobs. Definitely did a lot of bartending and serving, which is like, great money in New York, and
Mhm.
that definitely helped pay rent because New York is so fucking expensive.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and over time, I was able to like take on little projects here and there, just like recording things on and off. And then I managed to build a studio.
Oh,
And
wow.
I got like this loft apartment in this part of Brooklyn that, they just at the time they just kind of let you do whatever you want in these lofts. So I just built a full-on studio in there and like, it was an interesting experience because it took way more money than I thought it was going to and way longer than I thought it was going to. But once it was done, I was so stoked on it and like, fully just built it from the ground up. And yeah, I just recorded lots of like indie projects and stuff that were going on. Like at the time, the Brooklyn music scene was very like indie rock based. So I was getting a lot of that kind of work. And then eventually I kind of just was over it. I don't know what it was, time or place. And I was just like, yeah, I think I'm kind of done with this. So I closed down studio. I moved on. I started getting into photography work because I had some friends that were doing that and just did that for a bit. And then it wasn't until a few years later that I kind of got the itch again for getting back into music. And the first project that I took on was Chris's demo, which became Can't Swim.
Wow, really? Did you hear that you
Mhm.
just happened to hear the songs, and did that spark anything like, "Oh, you know what? I kinda wanna maybe I could help
Oh,
with
yeah.
this project," or
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. At the time, I was playing in a band called Go Deep. It was like a hardcore band, and we were doing some like DIY shows at South by Southwest. And Trash Talk was playing some shows at the same time. And that was when Chris sent me the demos, and I heard them, and I was like, "Dude, these are awesome! Like, we have to link up. I want to, on the drive back to New York. Actually, it was like 3 in the morning. I called them up, and we like, made our schedule for the pre-production and how we're gonna do the EP and stuff. And yeah, that was like the first project I took on, and I feel lucky that I said yes, let's do this.
Right. That's so the first EP that you put out with Pure Noise, that was the songs that you guys had worked on together? That you it
That
wasn't
was the
like
one.
you
Yeah,
didn't go back they didn't make you go back and re-record it, it was just like, "We're gonna take this, and we wanna put it
yeah,
out." Wow.
yeah. That was the one.
That's huge. That must have been a big I
Yeah.
mean, I talked to Chris about it last time about, how he felt about, getting those phone calls and stuff. Like, tell me about, having those conversations, I mean, with Chris about, "Dude, like, Pure Noise wants the project, are you down
Yeah. I
to
mean,
do this?"
it was bizarre because it's the last thing that I thought would happen. At that point, I had already, like I said, from a pretty young age, I was already like, music is my life, it's everything. And then, moved to New York, did the whole thing, and then I was kind of like, all right, I think I'm just out. And it wasn't until a few years later that this project, fell into my lap, and then started to pursue it. So for it being like the first step back into this world and it taking off the way that it did, and Pure Noise being like, yeah, we want to sign you guys. I was like, holy shit, like
Yeah.
what does this mean? So I was actually on my way when I got the phone call from Chris saying that, like, hey, Pure Noise wants to sign this. Like, do you want to start a band? I was on my way to LA. I decided to leave New York and I was going to move to LA and try to just do the studio thing out there. I have some homies working out in studios and was just going to try to just beeline for that. But on that drive, I was like, all right, I guess I need to like make a choice. Am I gonna just like roll the dice and just try to do the band thing all over again after years of already, trying, and I said yes.
Wow. So you were actually
It's
headed to LA when you got the phone call?
yeah, yeah.
Then it was like, what? Did you have the apartment, all your living situation all set up, and you're like, I'm gonna have to pull out, or like, what?
It's a it's a longer story. I was I I was moving there at the same time while like being on tour. So I was like using a DIY tour to move, if you
Oh,
will.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I was like
You're
with a
like, I'm
bunch
gonna
of my
throw a couch in
friends.
the back here. Don't worry. When we get to
Yeah,
LA.
pretty dude, honestly, pretty much. Yeah, we just had like belongings in the van. It was hilarious. But to make a long story short, our van broke down in Las Vegas and we had already like saved up money to like, get, you make your first deposit or whatever for apartments in LA and stuff. And Vegas, we had no idea was like so cheap to live.
Oh
So we're
yeah.
like, hey, why don't we just like stay here for a bit? Why not? It's Vegas. So we just got like a super cheap apartment and like we just lived in Vegas for a few months. Yeah. But I put all my belongings in Vegas and then just like booked it straight back to New Jersey and we started writing the first LP.
Wow. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I remember Chris was saying that the label ended up like giving you guys a little cash to get a van. And did you like, you hadn't even played a show or anything, and you had this deal, and
Yeah.
I think he said the first show was like in Maine or something. You guys had to go up and play in Maine, or maybe I'm
Yeah, I was
off.
in No, that's right. Yeah, I was in Portland, Maine was our very first show with 4 Year Strong, actually.
Oh
And
wow, what a
we
big show.
Yeah, I know, it was insane. And we had I mean, we just had no idea what we were getting into. And it was kind of we're all a little bit older and a lot of the bands that are like 4 Year Strong and stuff, like we're all the same age basically, but 4 Year
Mhm.
Strong has already been successfully like doing it, and killing it and playing huge shows and whatnot for years at that point. So we just like came onto the scene for what feels like our age, like a little bit late. And we're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like still feeling very green and like not knowing what is going on. So it was like intimidating, it was exciting, but yeah, like I said, I cannot believe that like if you told me 20 years later,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be doing that, and yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's awesome. I mean, I do want to talk to you about the new album for sure. I just have one quick question because we didn't really get into this last time I interviewed Chris. Is so you had that EP that the two you kind of put together, and it ends up getting signed to Pure Noise. Like going into that first album, and knowing that the first batch of songs you guys did, obviously worked. Fail You Again, was that hard to cut? Like, were you worried at all about like, are people gonna care? Is Pure Noise? You know what I mean? Like you're going into like whatever that sophomore release is, but technically it was your guys' first album. Did you approach that with a different mindset, knowing, okay, you have this record label kind of on your side now, and it's not just, okay, let's see, more of a passion project to see what happens. I mean, now your guys are like a legit band.
Yeah. I mean, the because of how Cancer started, and it was just sort of like Chris's writing project and me producing it, I think we kind of, at least the first song that we kind of had already pretty much recorded before we even started the LP was A Stranger.
Oh wow.
And we had that song pretty early. We had that song, I think, even before, or maybe the week before we signed with Pure Noise. And it was like, I mean, it's tough because the whole thing was just like Chris writes a song, I produce it, and we just take it from there, you know?
Mhm.
So it wasn't really like a very, I guess, traditional way of like the band gets into the studio and then we all do pre-production, then we record and then mix and mastering. It was kind of just like it still felt a bit like passion project. You're like, hey, we're just making some songs and that's it, you know? And Failure Again is very much like Chris's song ideas that he's had for years, you know, that he basically has told no one about. And, you know, because he's never been a songwriter before this
Mhm.
band, at least in this sense. And yeah, so it was just kind of like sort of cherry picking through all of the different song ideas that he's had and then just making it into an album.
And did you guys get new I mean, Stranger is a massive, song for you all. Was that something that you kinda did you guys have that when you were putting together the first EP, or is that came, like, a little soon after, or, like, and did
It
you
was
know the
pretty
song
much
was
soon after.
special?
We mixed and mastered the EP, and then like Chris was just like, "Hey, let's just keep doing this," you know? And
Mhm.
then yeah, we started tracking Stranger, and then right when I was mixing, it was right around the time that the conversation with Pure Noise was happening, and then we just kind of held on to it. We didn't even tell them. And honestly, I don't even think we told them that we were recording the first LP. And we were just kind of like we didn't know what we were doing, you know. We're just like we just make songs and we put them together, you know. That was like
Right.
it, you know. We didn't realize there's like schedules and all these things, and you know, we just kind of did it. And then by the time Pure Noise was like, cool, so like let's talk about LP1, and we're like, it's done. We already
Oh,
did
so you already had
it.
that as well. So that project was already being I didn't
We
realize that
s-
that was something else that you both were working on together.
yeah. I mean, it did. Stranger started off with just me and Chris, and then when I flew back to New Jersey from Vegas, that's really when we started putting in the time, and then involved the other guys in the project to like get the songs and making an album, you know.
Wow. That's wild,
Yeah,
man.
but
That's wild.
Pure Noise didn't know we were doing that.
That's funny. Last like I said, last time I talked to Chris, you were about to put out Change of Plans. Like it was just before the album came out. And I know that you're from what he said that you kind of had to wait on it, right? I mean, the record was done, and then it was like, do we put this out because COVID and all of that was going on? And then eventually the album came
Yeah.
out. So from like that point forward, like, from what I've been reading about, Thanks But No Thanks, is this kind of went back to the roots. Like, did you recorded it in Jersey? Like, tell me about how the this album began.
Yeah. So with much more of a format this time, you know,
Right.
now that we've sort of established some ground rules. Yeah. We, I mean, like I said, we kind of went into it with the perspective of like, hey, we want to recreate the energy and the vibe, just the feeling that the first EP was, you know, even down to like how it all started. You know, it was just like Chris brings some songs in and then we kind of just work at it, you know. And with more, you know, leaning in more towards our pop punk and emo roots. So yeah, I mean, Chris just had like a batch of tons of songs and, you know, presented it to all of us. And we just, you know, sat there in New Jersey in the basement of this like flooring store called Get Floored. And
That's a great
yeah,
name.
yeah, it's pretty great. Pretty great. Yeah, we managed to find this like studio that was like in the basement, and we were just there for like a month, just working on pre-production the entire time. And it was just every single day we were just like writing and sculpting and just like finessing. And we got it to the point where the pre-production was like that was pretty much it, you know, like the recording process was like totally melded in with the writing process, and it was just like happening at the same time. And then we finished the record, doing vocals at a studio I used to have in Brooklyn. And yeah, that was it. That's where I mixed it and mastered it. And that was it, dude. It was pretty much
Wow.
a standard, you know, get the band into the studio and then mix it and master it situation.
So you did it again, right? Because I think you had Will Putney work on maybe it was the album before that.
Was, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
then this one was back to just the band and you doing the production and recording and everything?
Yeah, yeah, and that was kind of part of the decision of like, let's re-explore what it was like in the beginning, and try to do that again, down to the point of, me doing the productions as well. Yeah.
Was that did you enjoy doing that again? Like kind of brought you back into that
Oh
captain
yeah.
chair as far as
Yeah.
putting together
a
the
hundred
album?
percent. Yeah, man. I mean, I love making records. I really do. I grew up listening to like whole albums. I'm old enough where that was a thing, and
Right. I love
you
that.
like, yeah, that's like so important to me, and that is how I connected to music so much. Like the experience, it's like reading a book, but it's like audio, and you get from beginning to end. I love it. That's just how I connect to music. So I love making records. So yeah, I felt super excited to be able to do this record, and thankful that Pure Noise was down to trust us to like try that again, because it's pretty standard to go to another producer, and I loved doing that. I mean, working with Will Putney was like an amazing experience. The dude is an amazing producer. He's like a
Mhm.
guitar wizard. And like it was just so cool to like work with him and meet him and stuff. And that was awesome. I really liked that. But I also like making records too. So it was cool that yeah, Pure Noise let us go for it.
Yeah, man. I really, really love the album. I love the direction of it and everything. Was there a particular moment or something that happened on the record that you were like, "Whoa, like this is, I don't know, like this is so
Oh,
like, you know what I mean? Kind of one of those moments you're like, this is rad. This is going to be a great record." I mean, aside from all
yeah,
the songs
yeah.
being awesome, but was there like a milestone moment
Thanks.
or particular piece that you can remember or recall?
I think so. I I used to have this like indie solo project called Mason Avery, and I like wrote some songs, put out an album like years ago. Just a little thing I did for myself, really. And Chris always was like a big supporter for it. He was like, "Dude, this is awesome. I love this shit." And
Mhm.
it's just like a thing I did for myself. But he hits me up like a week before gonna go into pre-production, and he's like, "Yo, one of your songs for Mason Avery." He's like, "I love that drum beat, and I know this sounds insane, but I swear it could be like made into like a pop punk song." And I was like, "Okay, I'll hear you out on this." So
Right.
so sure enough, we went to the studio and tried to like just using the drum beat as sort of like the template and like some parts of like the top line melody. And we it was like a tiny little part that sort of springboarded the entire song and became Nowhere, Ohio, which is the song that I think immediately we're all like, oh damn, okay, that like worked and also is like good. We're pretty happy
Mhm.
about this. And that also just kind of like it like turned on the flashlight for the rest of the record in the cave, and we're just like, okay, we know exactly which direction to go now for this record. It kind of helped us like see what the finished product should sound like, or what we wanted it to sound like anyways.
Mhm. That's cool that you were able to pull something that you had worked on or did, like, years ago for yourself, and then it was
Yeah,
like, "Hey, like, I like this. Let's turn it into a let's use
yeah,
it as a kind of a springboard for this new
yeah,
project
that's
or new
exactly what it
album or
was. Yeah.
whatever."
Yeah, I've never done anything like that before, and I'm so like I think the reason I like to stay on sort of this side of the, doing production and stuff and like playing guitar and not being a singer is because I am just so severely self-conscious about like any of that. And like doing my own project, just like, I'll that's it's not for me. I'm way too in my head about it. So, it was really cool to use something like that I made and put it towards something that I am also passionate about. And it felt like a great way for me to express that. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, what it's so vulnerable to especially singing, man. It's like it's I've said this before, it's
Terrifying.
like, um if you can if you have never played guitar, you suck you just pick it up and just like it could be a joke, like, "Nah," like, haha, like, whatever, no one cares, or if you smash the keys. But if you sing something and someone's like, "Ugh, like, you suck," it's like, "Ouch, I can't change how my tone of my
Yeah.
voice." Like, it's nothing I mean, you could learn how to sing better or whatever, but it's like, it's such a direct, like, jab, I feel like.
Oh, 100%, dude. Yeah, you'll think about it for the rest of your life, it like fucks you up.
You're right, no,
Yeah,
it's wild to think, but that's cool to be like, have him validate you on that early thing that you did, and then,
yeah,
use it on the
100%.
album.
Yeah. And it was Yeah, and yeah, I can't believe it ended up I can't believe it ended up there, and I can't believe that it, like, helped us see what the record would, was gonna sound like,
Yeah.
It's the last thing I expected.
That's amazing. And so you guys are on tour now. You said you're in Toronto, you have a day off. And then I'm just looking at your schedule, and then you're doing Grand Rapids tomorrow.
Mhm.
How's
Yeah.
it going so far? I mean, you're only what, 3 shows in?
Yeah, dude, we're 3 shows in, but it's been some of, like, the funnest shows we've ever played, and, like, people are definitely really excited to see us play the new stuff, which we're so stoked about, and, like, yeah, it's a super fun show. We're trying a lot of new things and just trying to have as much fun as we can on stage. Like, I think since we've recorded this record and done this record and kind of like returned to our roots, so to speak, um, we're just like so excited to just like have fun doing this. And we don't we don't want to care too much about like trying to write like good songs and trying to like do a band professionally or like trying to like, make it a business. We just want to have fun doing this. And we're sort of realizing in the last 3 shows that that's like fully translating in the live show because, we're just having fun. People are having fun. They see us having fun and they're having fun too. And it just feels like, we're really stoked. So I can't wait to see what the rest of the tour is like.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's like the authenticity of it all, I feel like. And then it turns into having a legit band and a business and all those things kind of falling in line out after the fact that you're like, well, we just want to not worry about that. But then it almost
Yeah,
creates the other aspect of
exactly.
the band.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Being in a band definitely it can feel like business sometimes, and but I'm basically like married to 4 dudes in a band. But but it's we just want to have fun, man. That's the priority. And like you said, if you're doing that and that feels good, people see you doing that and they connect with that. And the rest of the important shit that can come after.
Mhm. Sure, sure. The music video for Me Versus All Y'all that was directed by you and Chris, correct?
It was, yeah, yeah,
Was that
yeah.
the first video you've ever or first video you've done that you guys have done that way?
Yeah, that's the first video we've done that way. It again, kind of just going back to like the core of what we want moving forward is us just having fun. Like I so I when I got into photography, I was working in film work as well. So I like learned the trade a little bit. And I just had the idea for this record to just be like, dude, why don't we just do our own videos? Like it would just be funny, it'd be fun. At least we'll have fun doing it, even if the videos suck, like it'll be a fun experience. So so that's what we did. And our other really good friend, this guy Mike Brown, he is like so great with just like comedic writing and stuff like that. And we got him involved too. So that just also just felt like, it's just friends coming up with idea. I mean, it is really not far from just like you're sitting in your living room with your buddies, like telling stories and just like trying to make each other laugh and be like, oh, it'd be a funny idea. It'd be so funny if you're wearing like a fake mustache and you're like holding a spatula and you're like yelling at someone because they got it's like we're just spitballing stupid ideas and then we just actually put it in the music video.
Yeah, the video is so fun. I love when Chris, they roll up in the truck and like the balls, like they have like the balls that was so
Truck nuts,
popular
yeah.
on trucks for some odd reason, and then he
Oh
just
yeah, yeah,
chucks the
yeah.
drink. They're just
Yeah,
laughing
yeah,
at
yeah,
the.
yeah, yeah. Like, yeah,
uh,
those are like that's literally stupid ideas that were born from just like your friends hanging out together.
I love it, man. Well, thank you so much, Danny, for getting up and doing this. I know you guys
Yeah,
probably had a late night
100%.
last night, but I want to know. I have one more question for you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
100%. Um, dude, try to learn to do as much as you can on your own. I mean, it's probably the single most resourceful thing you can do for yourself as an artist, like down to, learn how to, get good at photography or like if you can learn how to make your own music videos or something. Like it doesn't mean you have to have flashy cameras or anything. You could do it on a phone or, whatever. Get creative on how you could make something to like, a product to support your music, learn how to try to record your own music. Like there's so much access now on the internet with like YouTube stuff for free, that you can do to make like quality stuff. And it's not about sounding the best or looking the best or being the best. Just like be as genuine as you can to yourself and do the best you can to put it out there with your own resources and your own talent. It's like the best thing you can do, I think.